All right, my friends, thank you for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to be discussing a book that captured my attention back in early December of last year. I was walking through Books A Million and trying to find something new to read, and I found myself in the psychology/self-help section. And this is the book that caught my eye, and you can imagine why. The bright blue, beautiful cover begged my attention. And of course, the title, How to Be Sad, I thought was quirky at first glance. So I drew closer to it and I read the words underneath that made this much more clear as to what its intent was. And it says, everything I've learned about getting happier by being sad. Now, I am naturally drawn to books that seemingly offer counterintuitive wisdom, that turn ideas on their head. And I like finding out how people think differently when others have approached the same subject time and time again. But I thought that this would be fun to read, at least interesting to take on and see what I thought, if I agreed with her concept or not. And as it turns out, I really enjoyed this book a lot. Now, it's written by Helen Russell. Her picture is on the back cover here, as is in many books. Let me read to you a little bit about her from the back inside leaf. It says, Helen Russell is the internationally best-selling author of The Year of Living Danishly, Leap Year, Gone Viking, and The Atlas of Happiness. Helen also writes for magazines and newspapers globally, including The Times, The Sunday Times, The Telegraph, The Independent, National Geographic, The Wall Street Journal, Observer, Metro, Grazia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's what I think. Stylist and Stella. She's spent the past 8 years studying cultural approaches to emotions and now speaks about her work internationally and hosts the How to Be Sad podcast. She lives with her family in Denmark. Now, I have no doubt that writers and publishers spend copious amounts of time considering what to write on the inside leaf of a jacket. This is where they inform you, the reader, as to what you should expect between the covers of the book. So I'm going to give them the courtesy of allowing them to speak in their own words here. It says, the happiest book about being sad. While devoting a career to writing best-selling books on happiness, Helen Russell discovered just how many people are terrified of sadness. Helen is no stranger to sorrow in her own life. Her sister died as a baby. Her parents split up as a result, and her mother never received the support she needed to grieve. As an adult, Helen coped with challenges like disordered eating and infertility, yet never let herself feel or acknowledge her sadness. Soon, she found it difficult to feel the good things too, like when she eventually became a parent. She knew there had to be a better way to live. Helen talked to experts and explored cutting-edge research, only to discover that the key to happiness is unhappiness. We actually need our sadness to tell us what's wrong and what to do about it. By allowing ourselves to experience pain, we learn to truly appreciate and embrace joy. How to Be Sad is an upbeat manifesto that encourages us to accept and express all of our emotions, both good and bad. Interweaving Helen's personal testimony with the latest research on sadness from psychologists, geneticists, neuroscientists, and historians, as well as the experiences of writers, comics, athletes, and change makers from around the world, this inspiring guide explores why we get sad and how it can be a force for good. So as you can probably tell, she spends a lot of her time speaking of her own experiences and makes them relatable to you, the reader. What I love about this book is that she does consult others who are experts in different fields. And that was actually my favorite part of the book, is when she got to talk to people from all different walks of life. And it was interesting seeing what they had to proffer. So I did enjoy the book quite a bit. It was an easy read. It's actually published by, I think it was HarperCollins publishing of publishers of the UK. And then the book is about, I think it's like 287 pages if you don't count the acknowledgement. Yeah, if you don't count the acknowledgments, it's about 287 pages. It's a worthwhile book to pick up. Let me share with you just some of the things that I am willing to talk about here. I don't want to give away everything. And I'm not necessarily going to talk about everything in order, but this will give you a good idea as to whether you think this is for you or not. The very first thing I want to do is turn to the back of the book, about page 283, where I think she concisely sums up the whole point of the book. Let me read it to you very quickly here. Here's what she said. Sadness has a point. It's normal. And it can tell us when something is wrong if we let it. If we're obsessed with the pursuit of happiness to the extent that we're phobic about sadness, we will feel worse. But loss, when experienced wholeheartedly, can lead to a new sense of aliveness and to a re-engagement with the outside world. When we're in a depressed state, we often feel numb or deadened to our emotions. Depression is a chronic mental illness that needs help. Sadness, on the other hand, can be an awakening. There is a freedom in sadness that is impossible to conceive of when we're all consumed with the urge not to be sad. Sadness is a temporary emotion that we all feel on occasions when we've been hurt or something is wrong in our lives. It's a message. But if we don't listen, it's more likely to tip into something else. So we all need to be sad well. We need to keep going together in order to live a meaningful life. My friends, she does that quite well in this book. And so that's what I wanted to start off with. I think that's her summation. And now I'll move on to the rest of the points. There's about 12 things I'm going to give you here and read just a few things from her books from her book in her own words. So listen carefully. The first thing I want to share with you that she exposited here was that it's important not to fight sadness. Many of us find it absolutely desirable to be rid of it. But if we don't deal with that emotion, and if we don't find out what it has to teach us, it's all lost on us. And in fact, we can't even truly be happy unless we can deal with each emotion, regardless of what it is, one by one. And it tells us something about ourselves and about the world we live in. It drops clues for us. And so many people feel entitled to be happy all the time that they're not willing to accept sadness at all. They're more willing to lie to themselves and form a narrative that really doesn't profit them in any way whatsoever. One of the other things that she points out is that we ought to expect disappointment. She goes on to say that life is not only full of chaos, but life is chaos. But if you have a sense of entitlement, you might be viewing your negative experiences and emotions as an injustice, an impingement upon your life. And the truth of the matter is, it's important to find out how we can make them best work for us. And I'm a firm believer in that. I have said for many years, no matter what life hands you, no matter how it might appear, the most important thing is to find out how you can make it work for you. So on this point, I completely agree with her. Another wonderful aspect she hits on is that we need to lower our expectations in order to be happier, in order to be rid of sadness. Expectations are what make us so miserable and so stressed out most of the time anyway, right? If you gave that like just 15 seconds to think about it, I think you'd come into agreement about that. But what she found out is that we are happier when things exceed our expectations. We're not only just going to be happy when things meet our expectations. No, we're actually happier when they exceed them. So it's important to lower the expectations to have a greater chance of exceeding them. And this is something I really want to focus on more in my life because I'm not a perfectionist about everything, which is one of the things she cautions about, but I am about some things. And so I need to know that it's okay. It's okay to be enough sometimes. It's okay just to hammer things out and get them done without having to make everything perfect. And that you don't have to be the greatest father, the greatest husband, the greatest employee, or the greatest at anything all the time. And if you think that's what you have to do to make other people happy, especially if you're a people pleaser, or to make yourself happy, you're going to be mistaken and you're going to just wallow in misery. So lower your expectations, avoid perfectionism, and learn to be okay with being enough. One of the constructive pieces of advice she gives to her readers is to be kind and also to serve others. Now I'm kind of mishmashing this together a little bit for the sake of time. So I'm going to talk about them together. What I really appreciate was how she explained what kindness was. It needs to be anchored in patience, because there are times, honestly, when it's really easy to be kind to people. When we're feeling good, when they're being nice back to us, when they're listening to us, when they're taking as much of an interest in ourselves as we are in them. But that's not always the case. And if you are establishing your relationships and determining the longevity of them on that alone, then you're not going to have a circle of friends for very long. So like I said, or like she said, your kindness needs to be anchored in patience. You have to be willing to listen to others, even if they're not fully listening to you. You have to be willing to ride things out and be patient with someone's foibles and their flaws. And when you can do that, they're going to have greater feelings towards you, and you're going to have a stronger peer group that will go with you on the longer haul. Now, as far as serving others, what she iterates about this is that when you step out of your own shoes and into the shoes of another, you are, I don't know if she uses the word empathic, but you are exercising empathy here. You are learning what the struggles of another person are, and that maybe your life isn't necessarily so bad. It helps one to not foster a victim mentality. Because after all, one of the easiest things to do when you're sad is to feel sorry for yourself. It's one thing to deal with your sadness and be honest about it and look it right in the face. But it's another thing to stay there and not learn anything from it, because what happens is you do start having pity upon yourself. But by serving others, you kind of jettison a lot of the toxic material that comes along with that. So that's something that she's shared in her book that I really did appreciate quite a bit. Now, one of the other meaningful things that she spoke about in this book is how you don't have to fix sadness all the time, not just in yourself, but even in other people. You might have a friend who has called you up and said, "Look, listen, I got some terrible news. My wife just served me papers, or my husband just served me papers, or I found out my kid hasn't been doing their homework and they're getting bad grades, and I thought they were getting straight A's. Or I didn't get the promotion at work that I thought I well deserved. I really worked for and studied for, and I thought I interviewed great, and they're not feeling too good." And she reminds us that it's important to remember that we don't have to fix it all the time. It's not your job to make someone feel happy necessarily. Now, we do arrive there at some point, or we hope to, but we do that by taking things head on and just sitting for a while and working through the emotions. And one of the things that I thought about when I read that was, I remember when I was going through some situations, some really dark moments in my life some years ago, and I called my mother up and she said, listen, Greg, if you feel sad and you want to cry, cry. If you want to feel angry, be angry. If you don't feel anything at all, that's okay either. She goes, but allow yourself to work through each emotion. And what was interesting to me was I had never really had anybody say that to me before. As a man, I thought there was expectations of being this rock. And to some degree, I think that we should try to be. But on the other hand, it's also important to know that we have feelings too. And so it's okay to not fix everything, but just allow yourself to work through them. And other people too. So keep that in mind. Now, one of the things that she naturally brings up in the book is about how you need to learn to love yourself. This is very popular, very common rhetoric that you hear in personal growth and development, self-help books, or even motivational speeches. But how you usually hear it said is, you can't love others until you learn to love yourself. And that statement has never quite settled very well with me, because I always thought, even though I couldn't quite put my finger on it, I always thought that's the starting point for that was wrong. What she says here on page 182 is, you cannot, well, she's actually quoting somebody else, but she says, you cannot love yourself unless you have been loved and are loved. The capacity to love cannot be built in isolation. I'll tell you why I like this. I'll tell you why I agree with it. Because growing up as a Christian and understanding my Bible, what I remember one of the things I remember the most is where it says, God is love. And we love God because he first loved us. In fact, we wouldn't even understand the concept of love. We wouldn't become well acquainted with it unless we had been loved first, unless someone had established what love was and what the parameters were. So I actually really liked what she did with this hero, how she shared it. I know she's quoting somebody else, but I'm really glad she put that in the book, and it was something I highlighted. In fact, I highlighted quite a bit, and that's one of the things I recommend when you read this. Keep a yellow highlighter or any other color that you happen to prefer by you, and mark the book up and annotate it as much as you like, because some of it is very thought-provoking. One of the things she goes on to say here in the same vein of loving yourself is she talks about how hard people are on themselves, right? You think to yourself, oh, I'm a bit awkward. People don't understand me. They think I'm crazy. They think I'm silly. They think I'm weird. And I said the stupidest thing. Everybody heard it. She says on page 183, she said, I'm often plagued by the idea that if I make a mistake, it's out there and there's nothing I can do to take it back. But further on down the page, she goes on to say, we should also take heart from the fact that we overestimate how much we're ever actually messing things up in social situations. According to research led by Professor Thomas Gilovich at Cornell University, we significantly overestimate how noticeable our embarrassing behaviors are to others. That's very reassuring. We also underestimate how much our conversation partners like us and enjoy our company, an illusion called the liking gap. After we have conversations, we are liked more than we know. Well, I don't know about you, but I needed to hear that. I'm sure many of you did too. But you're going to find it in this book and many more things like it. She did go on to also talk about how it's important to read good books. Now, this is something I say all the time, okay? We need to read good books. And she goes back and forth on the debate with another person, another authority, on whether you should read fiction or nonfiction. And there's an argument to be made on both sides. But I'm in the camp that it doesn't really make any difference either way. You learn something from reading biographies and history. And in fact, there's been many times I've come back to my wife and said, hey, I hope I'm not like this or that. Or you really, when you get to examine someone's life, the full scope, you get to find out what you want to be like and what you don't want to be like. And then when you read fiction, really good stories, I think of people like Charles Dickens, the very character-driven stories, you find out that other people, even if they're just characters in a book, that they share the same experiences in life as you do. And Somerset Maugham, he writes the best literature, best fiction, best short stories. That's why I enjoy him so much, is because when you find out that the rest of the world is just like you, and they feel what you feel, and they go through all the same things you do, and they come out of it on the other side, it's very reassuring. It's important to read good books. And when you do, you're able to see yourself in the story, and it goes a long ways in resolving your own personal dilemmas. So there's that. Now, the last thing I want to share with you is that she talks about how it's okay to cry, even for men. Now, I'm gonna be very transparent here. I'm a person who's kind of emotional. I do cry over some things, and there have been times in my life I've cried more than I'd like to admit. But one of the things she found out is that studies have shown that people who are willing to cry experience fewer episodes of rage. I remember my mother years ago telling me when I was upset about something, she goes, "You're crying because you're angry." I never thought about it like that. I thought, no, I'm just sad. She goes, no, you're angry. And that's how you're coping with it. And that's okay. And I thought that was good to hear. That was good to hear. And, I think this is very important for men, especially, probably even women. I can't speak for a lot of women. She does in this book, in her own words. But I can tell you that there's a lot of you men out there that could be benefited by allowing yourselves to cry from time to time in order to keep yourself from boiling over into behavior that could compromise your integrity and your character and your reputation. So think about that. Now, this is this is an enjoyable book. There are some things I didn't agree with, as I would say about any book. And there were some things I thought didn't make sense. But listen, it's just strictly my opinion, okay? And she's the writer. She gets to write what she wants. So there are some things I threw away, and there's a lot of things I kept. But I'm really glad I picked up this book, How to Be Sad. And if you want to know more about it, I'll put a link in the description below. All you got to do is click onto it, and you can purchase the book for yourself. I'm not sure if you can find it in audio or not, but anyway, I do recommend this, and I think it's something that it'll give you a lot to think about. There's a lot of other things I could have shared. I'm thinking about now as I'm getting ready to sign off on this that I'd love to just mention, but it would just go on for too long. And I just say just go out and buy the book and see what you think of it and enjoy it. Enjoy it. I think it'll give you some comfort. And that goes a long ways in this world. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's giving you something to think about. I appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to listen to me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye-bye.